Have you been experiencing internal financial struggles triggered by economic concerns? Are you feeling capped at your current income level and can't seem to realize your financial potential? Energy healer Gene Border has created an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping protocol to help calm the inner voice that keeps you stressed. Claim your free copy at geneborder.com/vow and say goodbye to those financial blockages. Welcome to another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Gene Border. It's not just about dreaming, it's about making those dreams a practical reality. Subscribe to us via your favorite network by visiting our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. Now, get ready. Your journey to success starts here.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Gene Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, where we talk everything business with a slant on energy work, mindset work, and the psychology behind our decisions and how it impacts not only our personal life, but also our business world. And I do have a special guest with me here today. That's going to be a really interesting conversation. But before we get to Michael Kramer, I would like to remind the listeners of the free resource I have for you. If you're in a state of tension about some financial issues going on in your world or in your community or in your country, it's typically best to make decisions from a place of calm rather than reaction or fear or tension. And so if you grab the PDF below, geneborder.com/vow, VOW, do a few rounds of EFT tapping, it will calm down your nervous system so you can now make decisions from a place of calm rather than fear or tension. I just did a round for you there. If you're watching, you can follow along those tapping points. And if not, the instructions are in the PDF, geneborder.com/vow. Let me know how that works for you. It's a really cool tool, easy to use and very powerful. And now on with the show. This is Michael Kramer, and this is going to be a very interesting conversation for me. Even though he doesn't know this, I used to do some of the stuff he's talking about. So, hi, Michael. Tell us, the listeners, a little bit about you. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Hey, Gene, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
So I think it maybe for the context, it'd be good to kind of start with sort of the genesis of what led me to where I'm at. And it's a story of tragedy, frankly. I'll never forget, this is back in 1992. My mother came to me and her youngest son, she got 5 boys and she's got 5 girls. So she's got 10 children. I'm her youngest son. And she came to me and said that she didn't have $600 to pay the backhoe operator to dig my father's grave. The night before, Gene, my dad had died in our living room on a hospital bed after a 3-year battle with cancer. And so if you can imagine, in that moment, we're grieving the loss of the patriarch of our family. I'm grieving the loss of my hero, the guy that I looked up to, that I frankly wanted to be. And then I look at my mother, who I love dearly, and I see her grief compounded now with this fear and this anxiety and this uncertainty. And it really set me off internally. Externally, I remained calm and wanted to be, she was choosing me for this conversation. But internally, I was getting really angry and upset and frustrated, because I thought, how does a man who has a great reputation as a husband and a father, a business owner for 40 years, Gene, in this community, who by all accounts was a great human being, leave his family broke? It didn't make sense to me. And so I set off on a mission. Although I didn't know how, I promised myself that day that I would never let someone in my family feel that pain or that anxiety that my mom felt that day ever again. And so fast forward a few years, I went to school, got a teaching degree. My first job out of college was in working for Caterpillar, working with blue collar, salt of the earth people. Really fell in love with that people group. But I felt like in order for me to really make an impact, I had to own my own business. So I decided to buy a franchise. And so my first business was a franchise business, home repair and remodeling business. And in the first year, we were the fastest growing franchise in the system. And in the second and third year, we were the top grossing sales franchise. And I remember thinking, they invited me to the national convention, which we go every year, but they invited me to speak as the keynote speaker at the national convention. And I remember I'm 28 years old at this time. I'm standing in front of a room, Gene, of call it 300 people. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't belong up here. Most of these folks have been business owners longer than I've been on the planet. And the irony in that was after that talk, which I don't even remember because I was so nervous, I had this group of people following me around for the rest of the weekend. And I was sort of celebrity status, and I had felt like I'd made it. I felt like I had arrived, But the question over and over was asked, how did you make it? How did you come from up from, zero to be in the top in 2 years? And my answer over and over was, I just followed the process. And that frustrated a lot of people, but it was true. I took the playbook or the standard operating procedures, the operations manual, and I swallowed it. That's how I like to say it. And I just took it and believed it and ran with it, and it worked. And I was wildly successful. But along the way, I had ignored my family. And my wife thought she married a teacher, ended up marrying a crazy businessman who had fallen in love with his business, and it cost me my marriage. And so here I was, a wildly successful financial guy with a broken family. And in that moment of sort of reconciling that, I realized the irony of how I was pursuing the correction of my dad's failure, only to create my own failure. And I would argue in many ways, a much more devastating one, because financially, now that I know how money works and how to create wealth, I could go broke tomorrow and I know exactly how to build it back because I've learned that. It's much more difficult with relationships. And so today, our company is called Free by Real Estate, and it was founded to kind of hold this dual mandate of, yes, create wealth, and yes, maintain family harmony. So today we have 12 family members that work full-time in our business, and our sole focus is to help other people who want to create wealth, specifically in real estate, do that with their families while maintaining family harmony, both while they own the assets and when they pass on, to ensure that there's not spoiled and entitled kids later and not fighting and bickering at the time of death, trying to divide assets. So that's become my purpose, and it's my sole focus today.
Wow. Yeah, when you were talking, when this little saying came into my head, it's only money, and I can always make more money.
Mm-hmm.
You can't remake your family once you've destroyed it. Well, you can make steps towards it, but it'll never be the same once it's ripped apart and put back together.
That's exactly right. I would say my greatest regret is not being married to my children's mother. Now, I would argue that our relationship is better now after being divorced. We've got a good relationship because we centered it around the kids. But for the kids' sake, I'm a little bit of an idealist. And so for the kids' sake, I wish that was still an intact family. I am remarried, and I'm very happily married, and she's my business partner today. And she's, half of the 12 family members are coming from her side of the family. So it's a very, very good relationship. And she's the right person to do this with because she's a business mind as well. But it doesn't come without its challenges, to your point.
So talk to me a little bit about the business that you have created and how you use real estate to create, I'm going to call it generational wealth.
Yeah. So our business model is we're value add people, meaning we like to find assets that need a little bit of help. I'm a licensed general contractor. Growing up, my dad's business was a collision repair shop. And so I learned to work with my hands. He built our house. I was constantly by his side working with him, and I was given the gift of I'm going to call it craftsmanship. Not everyone in my family had it, but I did inherit that from my dad, and really enjoy working with my hands. So the value add piece of real estate appealed greatly to me because I could see the potential in it, right? A lot of times people see a piece of real estate that needs work and they're like, whoa, where do we even start? I see it and I start to imagine what it could be. And I run towards that because of that experience. So we're value add people. We buy now strictly apartments. We did start with single family. And as we've progressed, and I can share, why that progression happened if you'd like, but as we've progressed, we now focus solely on apartments. We handle all of the construction ourselves because I own the construction company. We also have a property management company, and we have accumulated around 500 units over our time building our real estate portfolio. So we had to have our own management if we were going to manage at the level that we wanted to during rehab, which is where it gets really complicated, because if you imagine buying even a single family, but more importantly in a multi-family situation where you have multiple tenants in a building and you're doing rehab, there's all kinds of challenges that come with that. Noise, dust, dumpsters in parking spots, guys, strangers coming in and out of this property. So it's very disruptive for the tenants. And it's difficult for a third-party manager who's only getting paid a fee based on the successful rentals, those that are rents that are collected. They don't have the long suffering or the patience to deal with that problem during the project or all those problems. So we own our own management company as well. And so it's value add, leveling up the property itself, baths, kitchens, paint, flooring. And as we go through, leveling up the tenant base, rewarding those good tenants that are good to the property and helping them move into a nicer, newer apartment if they choose. And if they choose not to, they can stay. And those that move about, we end up bringing in new tenants that will pay a more reasonable market rate. Everything we're doing is affordable housing. So we're not, $2,000 or $3,000 a month in rent. I think our top rent is like $1,800 a month. Which in Omaha, Nebraska is still a significant amount of rent, but it's the working class that we're aiming at. It's high quality housing for people who have families and are looking for us for their next place to kind of level up from maybe an entry level apartment to a little nicer with granite and soft close cabinets and new appliances and those sorts of things. But we see it as a stepping stone to hopefully one day owning their own place.
That's nice. Yeah, I tried the real estate world for a while. I was flipping properties, I had a really cool, really good, I'm going to call it rehab team that I really, really enjoyed working with. But, over time things change, and I have I've sold most of those properties.
Yeah.
And that's not where my head is. And the whole management part, that's the part that I didn't enjoy.
Yeah.
As long as I could sell them immediately, I was fine with that.
Sure.
The real estate market, tanked like it was expected to, but I thought that I could sell the properties before it actually hit. So I ended up being a landlord, which was never my intent. And it's not my forte,
Yeah. It's funny you say that, Gene, because for years, I was a small business owner, and I've bought and sold 7 different businesses. 5 of those were the franchise. I had 5 locations when I exited, and I sold each separately. And then I had a manufacturing company and a sign business that I built and sold as well. But I had never done real estate. And it was actually a quick story as to how we got into it, because it was sort of a divine thing, I think, or serendipitous, depending upon how you look at it. But it was 4th of July, 2016. Yeah. And my wife and I had plans to celebrate. We're very patriotic people. I was in the military, and she's a strong supporter of patriotism because of me, I think, mostly. And so we had plans for the day, but we had a flip house that we were working on. And I said, let's go. And I just want to do a little bit of work. So I feel like the rest of the day, I feel like I've accomplished something and I can go, enjoy the rest of the day. So we show up, and it was in the center of Omaha. So it was built in the 1920s. And if you've ever seen an oak floor, original oak floor over, whatever it was, 80, 100 years almost, it had cracked and the seams weren't all tight, and we had just sanded it, ready to be filled and refinished. And the first thing my wife does walking in is she kicks over a can of white paint that somebody had left the lid off of onto this oak floor. Yeah. So you know what we're dealing with, right?
I'm cringing.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh my gosh, we just came here to work for a couple hours and now we just and it felt like slow motion. We're staring at this paint just creeping seeing it seep into these cracks. Like, oh my gosh. So we're hustling to get it cleaned up. After about an hour, we got it to the point where, okay, I think they could sand this area a little bit and let it dry. We'll see how it looks. And so we're getting ready to leave, and she wanted to leave. And I said, just give me one task that I can get done, so I feel like I accomplished something. Because if you've taken the Strengths Finder, the Gallup Strengths Finder, achiever is one of my top 5, which means I measure my self-worth based on how much I get done in a day. And so every day starts at 0. I have a hard time celebrating and, saying, good job, Mike, for all of your accomplishments. I'm more of, what did you do today? Right. So I go in the bathroom. I'm going to put one piece of trim up. If you think of a bathroom when you walk in as a 5x8 traditional, so the toilet on your right, vanity, and at the back was the tub. And so I'm standing at the door and I saw one piece of trim that I had to, between the vanity and the wall behind the toilet was in, and I had to put the piece of trim then from the corner to the door. And I hadn't put that in because I knew the wall had a little bit of a bow in it, and it wasn't going to be easy. The walls were plaster and lat. And so I'm putting this piece of trim up and I have to push on it to get it to conform to the shape of the wall, and I'm face nailing it and the nails aren't biting. The nails are too short. I was using 2.5-inch finish nails. So instead I thought, well, I'll just hold it in place and I'll toenail this one piece of trim into the other that was already in place, secure it, I glue it, and then secure it through this nail and let the glue hold it. Well, sure enough, I hit the nail and it came straight back, ricocheted, and went right into my eye.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, not like a glancing blow, not like, oh, that hurt. I immediately sat back on my feet. I was on my knees. I sat back on my feet and I felt, I don't want to get too graphic, but I felt, liquid running down my face. So I put my hand up and looked at my hand, and it was not, I thinking it was going to be blood, and it was not. It was clear. And I felt up above, knowing that there was a problem, and I could feel the nail sticking out of my eye. Instinctively, I pulled the nail out, which I learned later at the doctor's office I probably shouldn't have. But imagine trying to leave a nail in your eye. Like it's not natural.
Yeah.
So I'm like, get this thing off of me. And so that really was in the days and weeks after that, when I lost my depth perception. I'm blind in my right eye, even to this day. I had multiple surgeries. By God's grace, had a donor provide a cornea, and was able to make it cosmetically look okay. But I've never been able to restore the vision. But in the days and weeks after, there was some of the darkest days I've ever had. Mostly because, and I'm not proud to say this, mostly because of ego and vanity. I didn't want to look different. I didn't want to have a noticeable deformity. I was worried about having a glass eye or having a patch. It's so stupid when I say this out loud now. Knowing I didn't have depth perception, I didn't know what kind of work I could do anymore. Did I have the hand skills, which I love working on things? And my wife came to me and she said, hey, I think now's the time that we focus on doing something a little more passive. You have built businesses. You have done really well flipping real estate. But if we're going to depend on you solely, and it wasn't solely, that she's a huge contributor. She's back office, HR, accounting. So she needed somebody like me to go out and disrupt things and make messes and try to make money, so she could clean up the messes. But I think her point was, we rely heavily on you to produce income. And if you're going to be working with your hands, we're in trouble. So she suggested that we get into real estate. And just like you, Gene, I didn't want anything to do with being a landlord. She promised me that she would handle it. Well, we started a few months later. buying and selling real estate. We started wholesaling. We did some more fix and flips, but I didn't do any of the work. And we just slowly started to accumulate some money so that we could start buying and holding real estate. Well, what was interesting is the approach that we took was not to like dabble and have it be a side hustle. We basically wrote a business plan and treated it just like the franchise day one. We said, there's 7 critical functions in every business. There's leadership, marketing, sales, fulfillment or operations, accounting and HR, customer service, and innovation. And whether it's, John's cleaning service or Coca-Cola, every single business has that 7-part framework. And so we just sat down and we wrote out who's going to lead, what are they going to do when they lead, how are they going to lead? So it's a who, what, how matrix. And we did that for sales, marketing across the board. And most of the boxes that we laid out, my wife and I put our names in because it was just her and I. And so it was a systematic way of us saying, temporarily, we're going to be in this box, but systematically we could backfill and find people to come alongside and help. And so we quickly scaled we actually bought and held our first rental property in 2019. And here we are 5 years later, and we have close to 500 units that we own and manage ourselves without any investor capital. We also have investors, obviously, for the other stuff. But the reason I share that story is because if you treat real estate like a business, it can be very, very rewarding, and it can be very, very quick to reward you, but it takes a team. It's very difficult to do it by yourself. To your point earlier, when you're owning and managing, a lot of times it's against your will. And we buy most of our assets from tired landlords because they think it's an easy business to get into. And then they realize, man, there's a lot of work associated. And the cash flow from a rental is so minuscule, right? It's almost not worth it. So all of that to say, building it as a business was key for us to scale and to get to where we're at, and now be able to help other people do the same.
Yeah, for me, the properties that I bought were back in, I'm going to say, almost 10 years ago or more. And luckily, the property values have shot through the roof, right? I mean,
yeah.
I say luckily, it's taxes and everything go along with it. But
of course,
bottom line wise, my financial position looks so much different than it did when I was first starting to do the rental thing, which I did not want to do. Mm-hmm. And it took it time, but real estate's a cyclical thing. If it does this, it's going to do this, and then and you just have to watch the different parts of the cycle to see where you are when you get in and get out.
Well, what's a good way to hedge against that too, you're 100% right, Gene, that cyclical nature makes it very difficult to time the market. And I think that's a big inhibitor for people to say, well, when do I get in and when do I get out? We take that part of the equation off the table because we always buy for cash flow. In other words, in today's market, what can I pay based on what I can rent it for? So there's always a delta there. I'm always going to collect more rent than what I'm going to have to pay out in, taxes, insurance, maintenance, mortgage, utilities, and vacancy. And as long as my rent is higher than those baked in expenses, then I'll buy it at 8% interest or 4% interest. It doesn't matter. And the value of the house can go up or down. It doesn't matter because I'm buying on cash flow. So if the market dips, as long as I'm getting the rent, I don't have to worry about the value going down. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So many people get in trouble because they're trying to time the market or saying it's time to buy now because the rates are low. Well, what happens is every point of interest rate drop, the value of the property goes up 10%. So you've got these competing forces. Rates go up, the values theoretically drop. It's been a little bit interesting now where we haven't seen that hold true as it may have historically. But the point being, forget the market, underwrite to cash flow, and you're going to be safe. As long as you have fixed debt and don't get yourself into some adjustable rate debt that changes with the market.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I don't have it's interesting. I've had rentals since, I want to say 2005, 2006, but I don't have the rental property mindset. I fight it. I mean, I'm a good, they love me, and all this stuff because I'm very responsive, but it's not my thing. It's just not my thing.
Well, no, what do they say? Know yourself, right?
Yeah.
You have to know yourself. It's not my thing either. I don't deal with tenants at all because it's not my thing. And I know that of myself. And so it doesn't mean that you can't own property if you don't want to own, or if you don't want to be the landlord. My son-in-law and daughter manage all of the leasing, all of the maintenance requests. They handle all of the property management, and they're ideally suited for it, right? They don't want to do the things that I do.
Yep.
And so that's the beauty of having a team. Is there's some people that run towards things, and there's some people that run away from things. It takes all kinds.
Yeah.
And we're okay with that as long as we can source the right people, because we don't want to build a business. I think this is an interesting sort of not aha, but what comes to mind as we're talking through this is that so many people buy a business because they're trying to escape something. And it's not freedom from that we're trying to build these businesses for. It's freedom to, right? So if the freedom from a boss or a W-2 or whatever, whatever it is that they don't like, that's one motivation. And generally that's probably a bigger motivation, honestly, because there's a negative fear, and so much of our wiring tends to be, negative and fear-based, but the freedom to. And so what I mean by that is when we're building a business, remember the 7 critical functions and the who, what, how in each of those functions. I get to decide as the builder of this business. I'm the architect. I might have my names in all 21 boxes, but it's up to me if I stay in that box. If I'm the one building it, I get to decide who sits in that box and who runs that piece. I'm not stuck there unless I choose it. If I choose to stay, that's up to me. But we are where we are because of what we've chosen to do, right? So if we're in a box we don't like, my wife and I have this conversation often with our team. If you're in a box that you don't like, whose responsibility is it to change it? It's yours. You want to find somebody else that tell other people you want out of the box, find somebody who's running towards that box, train them and empower them to do the work. And then now you're free to go to the next box. And I think as the architect of a business, which I think so few people think of because they're thinking freedom from, I just need to get out of this. I just need to, I don't care what the business is. I just need to have some kind of a business. And they're trying to escape whatever that is, the boss or the time constraints, or ultimately it's freedom that they're aspiring to, right? The piece I think would serve them even better is if they say the freedom to what? And if you're going to be the architect of the business, ultimately you get to decide. What sucks, Gene, as you know, is day one, you're in most of those boxes and you're going to have to struggle through. There's no easy button, right?
Yep.
But if you have that framework and you have that sort of aspirational view for yourself, you can start to work your way into the box that energizes and excites you the most. Well, now you've got a business that serves you, even ours, where I don't want to be a landlord. And now I'm one of the biggest landlords in Nebraska. And I just I have somebody else sitting in that seat. I'm not in that box, right? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. See, I like taking something that's trash and turning it into something that families want to live in. That's what I enjoy, right? So I'd go in and we'd rip out because these foreclosures are a challenge to a lot of people, right? You go
Sure.
in and people have all the anger and the fear that they experienced and the despair, and some of them will rip out copper from the walls and they'll rip out all the faucets, and I had one place where some renters that we had to evict for non-payment, they took raw meat and put it in the vents,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, people are just nuts. But when you go through foreclosure, things like that, the houses, the properties, I did single family, the properties were just sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to take them from sad to happy and exciting for the people who walk through.
Gosh, I love that.
Juices me, right?
I love that so much, Gene, because there is a sadness, there's a death of a dream of some sort. Somebody bought this property with these aspirational goals and ideas of maybe having family Thanksgiving in the dining room, or how they would celebrate Christmas and see their children walk out of the bedrooms, and the awe and wonder that those kids experience, and all the things that we do as families together, movie night. That's all aspirational and wonderful. And then something happens to them, usually in a foreclosure financially, some unexpected, and maybe there's a divorce or disease or some job dislocation that they didn't expect. And instead of, they make a choice somewhere along the line. I can't disparage them because I haven't been there. I don't know. At the same time, there's always a choice. Life happens for us, not to us. And so in that moment of this surprise, how do you frame it to be it's for us instead of this is happening to me? And those that choose to say this is happening to me, oftentimes trail off into this negative, space in their mind. The narrative turns negative. The world is out to get them. And then it manifests in, I hate people, and I'm going to stuff, steaks and hamburger down the vents so that the next person comes in here feels the pain that I feel. It's not that they're evil people. They're just experiencing deep despair, and they're hurt. And for you to say, I recognize that this has nothing to do with the house. This has to do with somebody that was hurt, and I'm going to transform that hurt into that place that can be an aspirational and a lovely place, and a place filled with harmony and love and family and all the positive vibes that come with it. Is really, it's an amazing part of real estate. Because when you have a family that comes in and sees it through that lens, it's super rewarding to know I had a hand in changing the energy of this place from one of despair and darkness and defeat to one of, this is now my home, and I have a safe place for me and my family to experience whatever life brings. It's a huge, huge upside. And we don't talk enough about that in real estate.
Yeah.
We're talking mostly about numbers.
Yeah. For those of the listeners that are into or want to try out the real estate world, it's the first time you walk into a foreclosure home, or one that they just let the bank take over and they just walked out. Prepare yourself. Sometimes they're well taken care of even after the people leave, because they want to leave a legacy for whoever comes in. But for the most part, they take what they can take with them, and the rest you have to bring a dumpster to empty out mattresses and toys and clothing and dog toys. They left so much of their life behind, and you're seeing what's left of their life, right? What they walked away from. It's very, it's eye-opening the first time you go in.
It is. And I think that's part of, too, as you think about potentially owning or buying an asset like that, right? It's framing, I think for us, framing the human side of it appropriately, right? Like, you can be upset. You walk into a house and you say, oh, these people, and how do they live like this? And they're disgusting pigs, and da-da-da-da-da, and how did they, if you just have a little bit of like humanity about you, you can say, hey, it was a dark time for somebody, and just wish them well, and then get to work on resurrecting the property. The property is agnostic. The building is sticks and glass and paper and concrete. It doesn't care tin. It doesn't care anything about who's in it. And we as humans tend to ascribe all of that along with it. And it determines whether we're going to enjoy this process, which is difficult when you're scooping out dog crap or emptying litter boxes that have human sewage on top of it. These are examples of things I've actually done and are terribly nasty. But if it's done through this lens of, hey, this is about turning this into a place where people can experience positivity and a good life, you can tolerate about anything for that kind of a purpose.
And you mentioned a couple things. One was things happen for us, not to us. Why are you in the business in the first place? If you look for proof of the negative, you'll find it. If you look for proof of the positive, you'll find that too. Where is your mindset? What are you focusing on? Right?
Amen.
Why did you get into this business? What are you hoping to build? What are you moving towards? Right? For me, freedom is travel. Right? So that's why that's my big driver. I'm always looking at success as, when can I take my next trip? Right?
I love it. And
That's my success metric.
Absolutely.
Okay?
You're probably sitting on the couch scrolling your phone or a magazine, whatever your medium is, on the next vacation site, imagining yourself walking on that beach, or imagine the view from that place, or imagine the excitement that you're going to see going to that event. If that's what fuels you, good for you.
Yep.
Good for you. Go get it. And real estate can be a great vehicle to fund that. Any small business can be, right? I think the reason I'm so bullish on real estate and have, to the exclusion of all other business opportunities, I say no to almost everything else, because of the power that real estate has for generational wealth and passive income and tax savings. There's so many benefits that in the United States are afforded real estate owners that owning a small business may or may not have equivalent benefits to. And so, and most of the time they don't, because small businesses are run by rugged individualists, those that say, hey, I'm going to build this thing and I'm going to go. And then when they leave for 2 weeks to go on this beautiful vacation, they're worried the whole time, because do they have the right staff, and can they handle that big order that's coming in? And I probably need to check in. They're on vacation physically, but mentally they're not, which, by the way, Gene, I'm saying this because I lived that in my first business, where I was, wildly successful, sold it for, 7 figures after just a few years of building it. It was a life-changing event, but it cost me my marriage, because I was on my phone. I was so focused on building a business, because I promised myself no one would ever feel the pain of poverty, and it wrecked my family. Right? So to be truly free doesn't mean you have just financial success, right? It doesn't mean that. It means you can go on that vacation and know that the business is working in the background. Or if it's not, you're okay with it. It can go on pause for a minute and you're still okay, instead of being, fretting and worrying.
We all come at our businesses based on belief systems we've created from our past. So for you, your one driving force was financial security.
That's right.
And because your family dynamics were always good, it seems as though you didn't even realize that could be a problem. The family was always going to be there, because it was always there for my, mom and dad and all 10 of us kids. Family was not an issue. So it didn't even enter your head that, oh, if I don't do what my dad did to take care of my family, well, then they're just going to walk away, right?
Gosh, Gene, that is so on point. That's right, 100%. And I remember thinking after the divorce, I did all of this for my family. What did I miss? I felt so stupid. I felt so foolish, and it was like, gosh, it was so another one of those moments where I'm not proud of the outcome. But the mindset that we just mentioned of life happening for us, not to us, is really what helped get me through that, is to say, well, what can I learn? How can I be a better version of me? Because, what got me here certainly is not going to get me where I want to go. So I better reconcile that somehow, so that I take steps to right that wrong, if you will, right? Learn it. When you know better, you do better, kind of a thing. And so how do I know better? next time. Doesn't change the pain and the struggle and the disappointment and all of that. But it certainly has fueled me now. And to your point, the past experiences, those things that you've built in the past and now you're building upon into the future, become stepping stones or foundational blocks, or however you want to say it, to build on to what's next.
And the first step to change is awareness. You have to become aware, and that sounds so ridiculous, but you have to become aware of just what is it that is not serving you, not making you happy, not getting you the results you want. And then focus on that and figure out, okay, what needs to change to make that support me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for you, it was a slap in the face. You had no choice but to become aware.
Yeah.
But not always the way it works. Sometimes we have to sit there and think, okay, what is not working and what steps do I need to take? But the other part to that is, once you realize, you got to make a decision. You mentioned it multiple times, make a choice, right? Because if you don't decide, you're going to keep doing what you've been doing, and then it's going to feel all wishy-washy and, well, nothing's changing. Well, it's because you haven't decided to change it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting, and with the thought that comes to my mind, and I say this to myself often, is there's always pain. It's either the pain of regret, I didn't make the right choice, or there's the pain of discipline. And that is, I am choosing to do hard things to better myself. Either way, there's pain. Life is not easy. Life is not meant to be, a bed of roses. I'm a person of faith, and work is defined as struggle. And that's part of our journey as humans, is we all have to struggle. So if that struggle is true for all of us, then do we want it to be a struggle of being disciplined and making choices that are going to lead us to a place that we're proud of and excited about? Or is it a choice or a struggle of pain because we're playing a victim's role and we're not feeling empowered to make those choices? And there's all kinds of other things that play into that, which I don't know and understand, mental health and some of those other things that can be really debilitating for folks. And I don't want to diminish that. At the same time, there are moments of clarity and moments of choice that we all have. And in those moments, choosing the pain of discipline or to continue to do the same and realize later the pain of regret, that is somewhat in our control. Maybe not fully for everyone, but to the extent that it is, I encourage each of you to take that choice or make that choice for the betterment of yourself, because you can look back and be proud instead of look back and saying, I regret.
So for people who are interested in the business model you have for property management, I'll call it that, what might be the first step? What are some of the things they need to think about before they actually jump in and start investing that way?
Well, I think this is such a great question, Jean, because buying a piece of real estate is starting a business. And I think if they can frame this decision to buy a piece of real estate in that way, to say, hey, now I have marketing to deal with, I've got leadership, sales, all of the 7 critical functions that I mentioned earlier, and they're willing to address those, even if it's one property, they still have to, manage a tenant if it's or manage a crew if it's a flip, or manage guests if it's an Airbnb. There's these 7 critical functions exist. And as long as they're aware of that and say to themselves, I'm comfortable leaning into this extra work because they're buying a single asset equals a job. There's going to be work. And as long as they're willing to invest the time and the energy and honor those 7 critical functions, the business will do great. Alternatively, if they say, I don't have the appetite to go get another job, to have a side hustle, and I don't want the distraction from my family, I don't want to have another competing interest that I'm trying to manage, which is frankly a lot of folks, but they have some capital to invest, then their best bet is to find somebody like me to partner with that already has the team in place, all the systems in place, has a proven track record of success, and they can invest alongside somebody like me and go along for the ride, get all of the same benefits of ownership because they are an owner. They're an actual owner in the asset itself. That's a better way for many people to go. That way takes money and no time. The other way takes a lot of time and not as much money. So it's really depending upon where they fit on that spectrum of I've got time or I've got money, and maybe somewhere in between. They have to decide, is it a do it myself or is it do it with an expert kind of approach? Neither one is right or wrong. I've done both. I invest with other people as well. And so it just depends on what they want to do. The main thing in all of that, Gene, is to do it clear-eyed and with an understanding that buying one asset is buying a business. It'd be just like buying a vending machine. You have to take care of it. You have to take care of the customers when there's an issue, right? You have to be able
when
to
the water heater goes out.
Exactly.
Or when the heater goes out and it's 10 degrees outside.
Right.
Or when there's a windstorm and the tree falls down and just barely misses the house.
Yes.
I mean, it just goes on, right?
It's life. Yeah, it's life. It's the third law of thermodynamics, which is everything's in a state of decay unless there's an outside force acting on it. And so that outside force is you. And that's true of any business. Everything is in a state of decay. You start a business and you don't manage these 7 critical functions, it will fall apart, I promise you, 100% of the time. If you actively engage in those 7 functions, it'll flourish. Maybe not 100% of the time because you can't guarantee success, but the probability goes way up. And that's really all we want, is a chance for success.
So how can people find out more about you? If they have questions or maybe want to think about working with you, where all can they find you?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So I'm very active on social media, Michael Kramer on Facebook or Instagram. The best way to reach me is probably our website, freedbyrealestate.com. And so I'd invite anybody to visit the website, get a sense of what we do. If there's questions or concerns, just reach out. Our contact information is on there. I see all of the info that comes in, and I'd be honored to help anybody that needs help.
And the links will be below. For those of you who didn't catch all that, just click on the link. It'll take you right there.
Thank you. So
I really enjoyed our conversation, but we're coming near the end of our time together. So, do you happen to have any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners before we go?
Final thoughts, I'd say, is more of a personal thing. And you mentioned it, Gene, earlier in our conversation, which I thought was very insightful. And I think we glossed over it a little bit. So I want to bring it back. And that is, why are you doing this? What is your why? In my story that you guys have heard, you probably understand my why, because I've made some pretty significant mistakes. My dad did. I have. And as Gene mentioned, it's a slap in the face or a knock upside the head. Maybe some of you need that. But I hope not all of you do. And so if you can start with why, I highly recommend Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. What is it that when you're not feeling up to it, when that tree does fall and almost hit the property, or somebody breaks into the vending machine, or your employees don't show up, or you're having a hard time making payroll, which is going to happen when you run a business. How do you continue? Where's the reserve for you to tap into? For me, it's legacy. It's generations of families being sure that they'll never have to find $600 from somewhere to pay a backhoe operator to bury someone they love. If you have a strong why, any how is tolerable. But if you don't have a strong why, your how will fall apart because you'll be challenged at every step. So my encouragement would be to find your why, find that one thing in you that fuels you, that you can always come back to, and it will lead you to wherever it is that you're trying to get.
And on that note, we're going to close out the show. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciated our time together. I really enjoyed having the conversation. I don't
Likewise.
get real estate all that much, so.
You asked great questions, and it was a joy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And to the listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in again. Every Tuesday we drop a new episode. I'm so grateful that when you decide where you're going to spend your time, you decide to spend it with me. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And this is your host, Jean Border, with an episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey. Until next time.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast. Energy work to better your business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey.